Welcome to another episode. It sounds reasonable. I'm your host, Dr. Brad, and I am joined in the production of our weekly show by Tim, Tracy, and Abby. We're all members of the Free Thought community, and our Sounds Reasonable website can be found on Facebook. Abby is still recovering from her nuptials, so it will just be the three of us this week.
Recovering from her honeymoon, maybe.
Getting married can be rough.
Yeah, well, I mean, it can be rough committing matrimony, but
Yes.
we're kidding you, Abby. We're kidding you. We missed you.
That's what I would be recovering from.
And happy summer solstice and happy Father's Day, everyone.
Yes. Yes.
Happy Father's Day, Brad.
Well, thank you.
And Tim.
Yes, thank you.
Do you experience frequent irrational thoughts, a pervasive belief in a divine skyden, an insatiable urge to read horoscopes, perform spells, speak in tongues, or pray? Fortunately, you're now listening to the cure for these ailments. Sounds reasonable. This show is dedicated to bringing you, the listener, the latest news in free thought, science, logic and reason, and politics and religion. And of course, we encourage you to share your thoughts with us after every episode by posting comments and asking questions on our Facebook page. What is free thought? What does it mean to be a free thinker? The dictionary definition is a person who forms opinions about religion based on reason, independent of tradition, authority, or established belief. Here's Christopher Hitchens' working definition. Our belief is not a belief. Our principles are not a faith. We do not rely solely upon science and reason because these are necessary rather than sufficient factors, but we distrust anything that contradicts science or outrages reason. We may differ on many things, but what we respect is free inquiry, open-mindedness, and the pursuit of ideas for their own sake. We'll now move on to our science news segment, and remember that the scientific mind is one that allows its perceptions of reality to be constrained by good evidence and good argument. Now, I think we're all aware that we must exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide in the lungs to maintain homeostasis. It is oxygen that provides the chemical power our muscles need to carry out respiration, and thus is essential to our well-being. And of course, the other cells of our body are also dependent upon this, not just muscle. The following figure shows how oxygen-CO2 exchange occurs in the lungs via the erythrocytes circulating through the lung tissue. So what we're looking at, first of all, is an alveolus, which is just one of the many multiple small sacs that are found within the lung. And you'll note that blood flow is proceeding from left to right. And as the blood flows from the body tissues past the alveoli, note that the color changes. Okay, whoops.
Oh, sorry. It changed real quick.
It really changed.
It really changed.
Okay, so it goes from blue, okay, to red. Now, why does it do this? Well, in the blue form, shall we say, hemoglobin has carbon dioxide bound to it. And when carbon dioxide is bound to the hemoglobin, it has that blue color. As the carbon dioxide is exchanged for oxygen, we now reoxygenate the hemoglobin and it turns the familiar red. So if you've ever watched, of course, as you have your blood drawn from a vein, your vein is blue, of course, but as they draw the blood out of your vein, what happens? Well, it immediately turns red. And of course, the reason for that is your hemoglobin has now been exposed to oxygen and has released the carbon dioxide. Now, the reason this exchange works is because hemoglobin has a much lower affinity or ability to bind carbon dioxide than it does oxygen. And so as a result, because as you take a breath, okay, as you inhale, the oxygen levels are much higher in the air that you just took in than our CO2. And so as a result of the much higher partial pressure of oxygen, you very rapidly exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide. Now, one thing I'll add to this is the difference between carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. Now, remember that carbon monoxide, of course, is a very deadly gas. If if you want to know why people die from asphyxiation, if their furnace isn't working quite right, or if they try to commit suicide in a vehicle, this is the reason why. Because carbon monoxide has a stronger affinity for hemoglobin than does oxygen. And so as a result, you fail to carry out this exchange, and you die of asphyxiation. Okay, so thank you, Tim, for showing that figure. However, as it turns out, this is not the only way that oxygen can enter the bloodstream and oxygenate the tissues. A different route has recently been described, and Tim has this fascinating story. So, Tim, how else can this be done?
Well, we're going to talk about that. And again, thanks, Dr. Brad, for the background discussion over the gas exchange between the blood and alveoli within the lungs. Dr. Brad and Tracy, you two may not know this, but some people have said that I like to talk out of my ass.
No.
Oh, you probably
Actually,
didn't know
Tim, I
that.
think you got a whole classroom of those, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if you surveyed, you might hear that, yes.
Survey says.
Well, there is some evidence that in the future, I may be able to breathe, not out of my ass, but through my colon. And so today's story comes to us from The Scientist, written by Abby Alina, posted May 14th of this year, and is titled, "Mammals Can Use Their Intestines to Breathe." Researchers show that both mice and pigs are capable of oxygenating their blood via the colon at a capacity that, if shared by humans, could be leveraged to be used in a clinic to minimize the need for medical ventilation. So just real short on ventilation and why this might be advantageous. So remember, you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with the ventilators or machines that help you breathe when you're sick or injured or sedated for an operation. It pumps oxygen-rich air into the lungs. It also helps you breathe out carbon dioxide, which, Dr. Brad talked about the waste gas that our body generates through cellular respiration that we need to get rid of. But even while they help you breathe, ventilators sometimes lead to complications. These problems can result from the ventilator itself or from things that are more likely to happen when you are on a ventilator. So a couple things, you can have ventilator complications as a result of infection. Having to breathe a breathing tube in your airway could let bacteria in that infect the alveoli of your lungs. Plus, the tube makes it harder to cough away debris that could irritate the lungs and cause an infection. This type of infection is called ventilator-assisted pneumonia, or VAP. It is especially risky because you may already be quite sick when you're put on the ventilator, and ventilation also increases the risk of infections in other areas like the sinuses. The other complication is lung damage. Medical staff members carefully have to measure the amount, the type, speed, and force of the air the ventilator pushes into and pulls out of your lungs. Too much oxygen in the mixture for too long can be bad for your lungs. If the force of of too much oxygen in the mixture, if the force of the amount of air is too much, can be bad, or if the lungs are too weak, all these things can damage the lung tissue. And then that's called ventilator associated lung injury, or VALI. So is there an alternative to ventilators? Currently, no, there is not. But in a study published May 14th in Med, researchers present an alternative oxygenation route through the anus. They introduced oxygen in either gas form or liquid form into the intestines of both mice and pigs that had experienced asphyxia, or low oxygen conditions, and showed that the animals survived much longer than they did without that treatment. Quote, I've never read about it or thought about ventilation using the internal system, says Diva Patel. It might be Diva Patel, a pulmonary and critical care physician at the University of Florida College of Medicine, who did not participate in the study, but in this particular work, but has worked with medical ventilators of the bridge. Again, she was talking about how they buy us time for the body to heal, but the problem with them is that they also cause injury to the lungs, like we talked about. Okay, so I'm going to probably butcher this name. Takanori Takabe, I believe, who is.
No, that was perfect.
Is that, well, I'm sure it is. It had to be right. Why did I even say I would butcher?
Yeah,
Nailed it.
you to say, Tim.
Yeah. Who was affiliated with the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, Tokyo Medical and Dental University, and the Yokohama City University. Typically focuses on manipulating stem cells to grow functional human organs in a petri dish. But 3 years ago, his father, who has a chronic lung condition, developed acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS, which is a pulmonary condition that can be lethal and is common in patients with severe COVID-19, and he needed to be ventilated. Fortunately, his father survived, but the experience impressed upon Takabe, how limited the treatments for respiratory failure are. Quote, the standard of care is really damaging to native lung function, he says. His father now has compromised lung function, which is not uncommon in patients who have been ventilated, particularly for an extended period of time. Quote, I realize we need different ways of respiration support without engaging in the native lung, he adds. Takabe and his team did some research and learned that many organisms, including fish such as the loaches, are old world freshwater fish found in rivers and creeks throughout Eurasia and northern Africa. And arthropods use organs, including the skin and the intestines, to acquire oxygen. To determine whether mammals have such abilities, they started with mice. Mice were given hypoxic air through the tracheas, and those that were given that air survived an average of 18 minutes when the researchers introduced oxygen gas into their intestines via the anus. The mice, under those hypoxic air conditions, when given oxygen through the anus, survived 18 minutes, but only 11 minutes without giving that oxygen.
Yeah, just so our audience is clear, Tim, so hypoxic air means what?
Low, it would be low in oxygen, low percentage.
Right, yeah, so very low level oxygen.
Very low, yeah,
Okay.
yes,
Right.
thank you. When the researchers abraded or scraped the intestinal lining with a brush, then introduced the oxygen gas, most of the animals survived for at least 50 minutes with the damage of the lung, damaged intestine a little bit, I guess. When you apply lethal hypoxic conditions in the mouse and supply oxygen internally, the survival was double in terms of time, he explains. That will give us a lot more time to manage the condition, to accurately bridge until treatment is available. it's quoted as saying. Next, the researchers tried a more feasible method than abrading the lining of the gut, which you hate to have to damage the lining to get oxygen transported. So they introduced oxygenated liquid known as perfluorocarbon through the anus. In previous clinical studies, perfluorocarbons carrying dissolved oxygen have been administered directly into humans' eyes and blood vessels, as well as the airways of premature infants to help reduce lung injuries. The researchers infused either oxygen-loaded perfluorocarbons or saline through the rectums of mice in a low oxygen chamber. The animals that received the oxygenated liquid showed improvements in the oxygen pressure in their blood and were more active after their perfluorocarbon infusion than were mice that just received the saline infused perfluorocarbon. I was after I reading about that, then I thought, I was thinking about a video I once saw a few years ago where they had put mice into a container of liquid and they were just
I've
able
seen
to
that
breathe.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I never looked, but I assume that must have been maybe it was a perfluorocarbon infused.
Yeah,
liquid.
it was the identical material. 'Cause the idea, of course, was that they weighted the mice down so that they had to stay submerged.
Right.
And
Did they
there,
drown them?
there
Did
they,
they drown them?
no,
No.
they didn't drown because it's realize, of course, that the lung is a modified gill. It's just been modified such that it extracts oxygen from air much more efficiently than it would from water. But if you have a liquid that you can saturate to higher levels with oxygen, like these perfluorocarbons, then it becomes the equivalent of air. They were just fine. They took them out,
Yeah.
drained their lungs, and
Right. Showed them
they
just
were
kind
no
of
problem.
just showed them swimming under the water,
Yeah.
or under the liquid, just swimming around, having a good
Yep.
time.
Yeah, it was
And
pretty amazing.
they talked
That's
about
cool.
they had talked about that as a possibility for if you had to do a deep sea dive that you would do and do that, inflate your lungs or fill your lungs full of that. You'd be
That would
sitting in
feel
that.
so weird, though. I can't imagine
No,
how that would feel.
I can't either. I feel like you're drowning. You're
Exactly,
freaking
it
out.
would. It would, even though you're not.
I guess it would be similar, that the fetus, right, is
True.
inhaling
Yeah,
the
true.
embryonic fluid.
Huh.
But all right, so then the team tested the oxygenated liquid strategy in anesthetized pigs, which share more physiology with humans than do mice. They used a ventilator only 5 or 6 times per minute to induce non-lethal respiratory failure, and then rescued the pigs from hypoxia with an enema-like administration of the oxygen-loaded perfluorocarbons, and observed no obvious side effects. To further test safety, they did infusions of the perfluorocarbon into the intestines of rats. The rats were not dehydrated and did not experience diarrhea, and the levels of oxygen tonicity markers were the same or less than observed in the saline controls. The findings are, quote, an example of evolution tinkering with some systems likely evolved from for another purpose. That is to digest food and to move nutrients around in the body. And then co-opting that system to do something else that's really useful for the organism, says Art Woods, a biologist at the University of Montana. He was not involved in the new study, but in a 2017 paper that inspired the study, he showed that with colleagues that sea spiders use their gut to transport oxygen. That's pretty clever to do this in some kind of interventional way as a medical technique, he adds. Based on prior approval of perfluorocarbons by the FDA for other indications, quote, we are very optimistic about the safety and tolerability in human applications, Tuckabee said. He and his colleagues are forming a startup company to conduct further preclinical safety analyses and also evaluate more animal disease models. He says they hope to start clinical trials next year. but cautions that it is not yet clear whether improving oxygenation via this method would be helpful in coronavirus patients. COVID-19 is not just about ARDS or lung oxygen problem, but there are a number of different pathologies involved, he explained. So, quote, understanding the mechanisms would help to encourage people to adopt and do further research on it, says Patel. Other next steps include investigating the strategy's effectiveness in ARDS or pneumonia type models, as well as looking more into safety for the application of perfluorocarbons in people. She adds in this technique, if the technique proves effective and potential and safe, it is potentially could be a way to avoid mechanical ventilators or be able to set it to very low settings so that you're not causing that ventilator induced lung injury. So, Dr. Brad and Tracy, are you guys ready for your perfluorocarbon enemas?
Yes, yes,
Help you get a little more oxygen.
absolutely.
I mean, are they telling me that they will pre-warm the liquid or?
Oh, I never thought about that.
Doesn't
That'd be a
matter.
shock.
Doesn't matter to me.
That would be a shock.
No,
Yeah, very interesting research there, I thought.
you know, well, it is interesting, and you know, I'm trying to think evolutionarily why that would have been preserved. You know, I'm not. I mean,
I'm just
fish, of course, do not swallow water with the idea of you trying to extract oxygen. You know, they drink it for the same reason we do. You know,
right.
maintain hydration. So
I just think the fact that you have this very large surface area, you know, created by those villi, microvilli, and a large, you know, that blood supply, you know, capillary network that's literally, you know, designed to, you know, transport nutrients. Of course, but well, the colon is more absorbing out liquids and stuff too. But again, you still have that vascular network. I think that.
sure, I mean, you obviously have an extensive capillary network there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you know,
And there is important, you know, remember the importance of the enteric bacterium producing the coenzymes, you know, the vitamin B's, and of course there is some minimal, you know, still some digestion of insoluble food particles. So there is a big need for absorption of a variety of things in the colon, yet not just the small intestine. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wild.
yeah, I mean, it's interesting possibility. You know, of course, you're sitting there wondering, all right, so you know, how much liquid would be needed? How are you going to exchange it? So there seems to be a
Hold it in.
lot of technical issues, shall we say, to work out.
Right. How to hold that in, because you spontaneously have the urge to release that. Anything that.
So many uses for our buttholes.
Yeah.
I mean, just like so many.
I don't know if you guys have ever had to go through the trauma as a child of having an enema, but I know I did, and it wasn't fun. So,
It wasn't? I don't.
I don't.
Well, as the old as the old joke goes, if we gave Trump an enema, we could bury him in a matchbox. So.
Yes.
So maybe he'd be willing to jump into this clinical study.
Oh man. Yeah.
No, it's interesting and you know, something that, you know, who knows, somebody may be able to make use of that. You know, I don't know. To me, it would be very uncomfortable to do.
I can
And
see if
so,
you had.
but if that's the route you need to do to stay
Yeah, if you
alive,
had severe lung damage, maybe because of
Yeah,
from a fire breathing heat or whatever. where
sure.
it
Yeah, I
just
mean, there could be a number of reasons
or
why
acid,
may be
couldn't
needed.
ventilate. Yeah,
Yeah,
couldn't ventilate.
yeah. But they
Yeah.
don't they have kind of the equivalent of an artificial lung, where they, in essence, circulate blood outside the body? And I was thinking they had stuff like that, but
I am not. They may. I'm not familiar with. What the,
so I don't know in terms of human application how much is there, but
mhm.
it's an interesting possibility. All right, Tim. Well, thanks so much for that story, and we'll be right back after this short break with More Sounds Reasonable.
Okay, guys, we're on a break.
All alive. The devil's in the detail, lingered inside. Oh, a holy crime. But how can I hide you without an alibi? It's a lover's fight without an alibi. You took my innocence. I can't wait no longer. I'm playing with the monsters. Everything that brought me alive. Going around like nonsense, playing with the monsters. They brought me alive, but got no alibi. It's a lover's fight without an alibi. You took my innocence without an alibi.
And we're back with More Sounds Reasonable on June 20, 2021.
June 20th.
It is.
It is, I know. Now, Tracy had put together an excellent series of reports on QAnon a few months back. And if you missed those episodes, please search our archives. They're definitely worth listening to. But now that the predictions of Trump's return to the presidency, if you don't count the one that says he'll now return in August, have all proven false, what is happening to the QAnon movement now? So Tracy has a follow-up to her earlier work. So Tracy, is Q getting, shall we say, dropped?
Well, let me just point out that August has not happened yet.
That's
You
true.
guys,
That's true.
we don't know. That's not gonna happen. Okay, this story is from Raw Story, authored by Matthew Chapman, published June 11th. QAnon's demise is well underway as adherents cut and run from the cult. Columnist. All right, so this is a columnist who wrote this. And I just want you to know, I've been infiltrated into QAnon, and they have elected me as one of their officials. No? Yeah, I'm an official now. I'm the secretary of QAnon.
Secretary of QAnon.
Yes. On Friday, writing for the Chicago Tribune, columnist Virginia Heffernan argued that QAnon conspiracy, which holds that former President Donald Trump is fighting to take down a cabal of flesh-eating pedophile Satanists who rule the United States, is rapidly falling apart and will soon fade into the history books. The history books. So
safe now. Okay.
yeah. I just hate that things like QAnon are going to be in our history books. How embarrassing. Okay. QAnon, who made a messiah out of former President Donald Trump, was always bound to lose steam. It will follow the arc of furious, loopy-loo American conspiracy theories that have existed since before the Civil War. Cults like QAnon burn bright and they fade fast, wrote Hefferman. QAnon's demise, in fact, is well underway. Its leader, Q, a figure from the internet's dark side, is now widely suspected to be the creation of Jim and Ron Watkins. The Watkins men are a seedy father-son duo in Asia who serve up pornography and hate speech online. Hate speech online. They don't hate speech. They hate speech.
Like pornography.
I think there should be a hyphen there, but anyway. As evidence of the decline, Heffernan noted the mysterious anonymous poster Q, whose cryptic messages drove the theory, has vanished from the internet. Many believers have now disavowed the movement, and the fallout from the January 6th Capitol riot has led many more to blame the movement for their violence. QAnoners who are still on board aren't sure what any of it means anymore, wrote Heffernan. Some have stopped talking about Trump and now just preach anti-Semitism. Others are supporters. A dog fight over here.
Kids are noisy.
Others urge supporters to take on debt because somehow the future belongs to cryptocurrency and the Iraqi dinar. Dinner? No, not dinner. Dinar.
Dinar, yeah.
I think I'm hungry. I'm sorry. Orthodox Q types whose numbers are diminishing are presumably still waiting for tribunals for Trump's enemies. And of course, the storm. But then late last month, pro-Trump lawyer Sidney Powell, one possible heir apparent to the Q empire, dismissed some of the most popular Q memes at a Dallas Q convention. There are no military tribunals that's magically going to solve this problem for us, she said. Of course, that's not the end of the dangers posed by fanatical groups. It might not be QAnon next time, but extremist ideologies and paranoid fantasies will always captivate the dispossessed, concluded Hefferman. And if we're still battling a cult that's defeated, we're in strategic trouble. Not only will we have failed to learn from Q's unraveling, but we also won't be able to recognize the next catastrophe, let alone prevent it. What do you guys think? Is QAnon gone? Are we going to have like a replacement?
Well, yeah, unfortunately.
We'll have to do something.
Replacement of some kind. The you know, there never seems to be a vacuum that survives very long in politics. So if somebody got something going and that goes down, then it very quickly gets filled with something else. And that so who knows? I mean, it's hard to imagine something else being much worse than QAnon, but I'm sure there's groups out there that would love to jump in where they have been.
Right. I mean, the crazy people have to do something, right?
Yeah, they can't just stop being crazy. I mean, that'd be
Oh,
crazy.
I know. There's no cure for crazy.
I guess the.
Well, I mean, I've always hoped there was. I always dreamed there was a way.
Searching for the cure.
Yeah. We can have walks all day long. The crazy walks.
I guess the positive thing is to see that after all these, things that haven't come true, that the Q believers were told that were going to happen, and they're not coming true, that they're finally reaching, realizing that it's not, it's a hoax or it's not legit or whatever they're realizing, and they're becoming disinterested or disheartened with that movement. But they're going to look for another movement. They're, I'm sure they'll look to see if they can find another cause that fits their ideology. But hopefully Q has been quashed.
Maybe a lot of them have been arrested on other crazy.
Well, I know a bunch of them, several of them were arrested from the riots, from January 6th.
Mhm.
But no, I mean, it just reminds me of all of the end of the world predictions we had a few years ago when, as we were approaching, prediction X would not fly, of course, and so you go, oh, I've made a miscalculation. It was actually supposed to be this date, and then that date goes by, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And
I added when I said it's a fact.
Eventually, even those people get tired of hearing wolf, and so.
Right.
Fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times, fool me 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, 10 times.
Well,
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was going to say, of course, we know we see this with the trumpets. There's always this faction or fraction of the group that no matter what will always still believe. But I think but again, hopefully the group is losing momentum, losing supporters.
I think you should insult band instruments like that.
Sorry.
I mean,
I thought you
what
played
has trumpets ever done to you?
I thought you played the clarinet, Tracy.
I played the drums in 6th grade.
Oh, that's
That was good. It was really
I
good.
played the triangle.
The triangle.
Yeah, I always had trouble tuning it though. You could never get enough pitch.
2 notes a song.
It's like that.
Mm-hmm.
I used to play the triangle, but it was to call my dad in for dinner. So.
I don't get it. Is that an old person thing?
Yeah, it's a farmer's thing.
Farmer thing, ring the dinner bell. You've heard it. Ring
Oh.
the bell. Yeah, so.
You city people don't know about this farmer.
Oh, well, I mean, all I can say is I'm just heartbroken that we won't have any more stories like this. We'll have to look for a new group, I suppose, to target for some new stories.
We'll fill the void.
Yeah, fill the void.
Yeah.
All right, Tracy. Well, thanks so very much for that story, and we'll take
Sure
another
thing.
short break. Be back with more Sounds Reasonable.
Messing with my head again. You had your heart set on me, but these feels, they come and go, and they come so easily. Tell me what it is about you that I can't forget, but you're breaking down my walls again just to set me free. Why do I, baby, why do I love the way you are, we always leave me? Why do I, baby, why do I love the touch but never love the feeling? Why do I, baby, why do I love the way you are, we always leave me? Why do I, baby, why do I love the touch but never love the feeling?
And we're back with our abbreviated edition of Sounds Reasonable this week, since Abby's not with us. So we're going to go ahead and go right to our crazy story of the week. Now, the moon has been the subject of wonder ever since mankind developed consciousness. Whether it be exactly what it was made of course, the popular fairy tale of it being made of green cheese has been around for quite some time.
It's not made of cheese. What?
I'm not sure which I don't know which cheese is green, but I know I would not be anxious to eat it. Yeah, so
Moldy.
Molded cheese.
molded would be
You just cut the mold off of it and then eat it,
That's right.
right?
or
We always do.
if we've got any It's a Wonderful Life fans out there, you may remember that George Bailey was going to lasso the moon for Mary. And that shows up several times in that movie if you've never seen it. But of course, we reached the moon. At least the majority of us accept that. There are moon denialists also out there, which we'll have to address that sometime. Check out that story. But anyway, once we reached the moon in the early 60s, the precise composition of it was determined. However, pushing all of this science aside is Congressman Louie Gohmert. So our crazy story comes from the Rolling Stone, June 9th of this year. And it was authored by Tessa Stewart and is titled, "The Dumbest Guy in Congress Asks U.S. Forest Service If It Can Change Moon's Orbit." Now, I don't know about you, but I can only think of one person that could do that, and that's Superman. So,
Superman.
You can spin the earth backwards too. The first time.
it's true. I saw that.
Yep, he flew around so fast that he
Yeah, saw it on TV. So now, Representative Louie Gohmert, Republican from Texas, who admitted recently that some consider him the dumbest guy in Congress, appears intent on proving those people right. On Tuesday, the Republican
You can do it, Brad. You can do
On
it.
Tuesday, the Republican congressman asked a representative of the U.S. Forest Service, tasked with managing America's national forests and grasslands, if the agency might consider branching out, so to speak.
Branching out.
Yeah. I understand from what's been testified to, the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management, you want very much to work on the issue of climate change. I was informed by the past director of NASA that they found the moon's orbit is changing slightly, and so is the Earth's orbit around the sun. We know there's been significant solar flare activity, and so is there anything that the National Forest Service can do to change the course of the moon's orbit or the Earth's orbit around the sun? Gohmert inquired. Obviously, that would have profound effects on our climate. Well, he's right.
He's right.
That would indeed have profound effects if we changed the Earth or the moon's orbit. Now, why in the hell he thinks the Forest Service would have anything to do with that on top of it is.
Did you watch the video of him saying that, and then the response? It was like a, I don't know, like a 5-second delay. It was like because he was this assistant, whatever the NASA guy was, but there was there was like a pause, and while he
Was he looking around?
yeah, I know. It didn't show him. I wish it would have shown his face, because it had to be like, what? Did I hear that right?
He thought he was being punked.
And he gave a respectful, like, well, we'd have to look, something like we'd have to kind of look into that, I guess, or something. I don't know if I could answer that.
Good thing he wasn't drinking milk right then.
Everyone said, are you kidding me? Am I being pranked? Am I on? Is this a prank? Am I being?
Was he being punked? That's
Yeah,
probably
punked. That's what I'm saying. Am I being punked? Here.
Wait a minute, are you Alan Funt?
Yeah.
Man,
Where's the camera? The candid camera? Oh man.
Oh,
No, I
that's
watched
great.
that video a couple times with him. Yeah, and I guess he's said other goofy crap.
Oh, man, all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
you could do a story on him every week.
Yeah. Well, put him and Marjorie Taylor Greene together, that'd be quite the.
And I think,
They would make a special team, a very
Well,
special.
yes,
Cruz,
very
Cruz,
special.
yeah, yeah. You. Oh man.
I think they were together. Didn't they go out to Arizona together?
They might have. I don't recall.
Weren't they part of the group that was going to help the audit?
Oh, could be. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I don't know. I just, yeah. It's obvious that the people that these candidates or these elected officials hire to get them elected are very good at their job of not letting the populace know how these people really are.
Yeah.
Because they're able to get just morons elected to Congress with no problem, it appears. Well, I guess in Taylor Greene's, I guess there wasn't anybody running against her. That would be the other.
Right.
That's
Exactly. There was
crazy.
nobody. Yep. Nobody even running. Yeah, she ran out close.
How could that happen?
Yep. So that's right.
How did that happen?
Yeah, how could there not elect someone to Congress with no opposition? How the hell?
Yeah, I don't know how that happens, but it did.
People should really watch our show.
They should.
I watch it. Just my segment. No.
What? I missed that. I missed
Tim
it.
said at least his segment.
Yeah.
Watch your part. Fast forward.
I play it on a loop.
Put it on a loop.
Look at me.
Put
Look
you
at
to
me.
sleep at night. Does it put you to sleep at night?
Yes.
To watch it over and over.
Suffering from insomnia.
Right. Exactly. That's what I
My loop.
for my
Can't sleep. Sounds reasonable.
yeah when I'd record the face-to-face class and record my micro lectures for my college students, that's what I would say. Well, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, just pop up one of my lectures, start listening, and we'll put you right to sleep.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, I think we'll call her good there. So
Already.
I know it's a fast show today. So that will wrap us up for this week.
Sad.
If you've enjoyed our program, please pass the word to your friends and associates, believers and non-believers alike. Again, just a reminder that you are welcome to post comments and ask questions on our Facebook page. Remember, there is an enormous difference between having good reasons for what one accepts to be true and having bad ones. Incidentally, this is the only distinction one needs to become a strict atheist. This has been Dr. Brad for Tracy and Tim saying so long.
Yeah.